And we're live.
Hey.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good
morning, everyone.
G'day.
G'day. How Aussie is that? Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Camera Life podcast, brought to you by Lucky Straps and all of us here at the Camera Life. It's the 25th of July. It's currently 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, and we're in Victoria, in Australia. And this is episode, I've forgotten already, episode 23 of the Camera Life. If you're watching along and you've stumbled across this podcast or our channel, please make sure that you subscribe and hit the like button and tickle the little bell to make sure you get notifications. We run our podcast every week, Thursday, 9 a.m. AEST, coming to you live. And these recordings are obviously on the YouTube channels for the Camera Life and for Lucky Straps. Now,
Editor Seb says he's receiving us loud and clear. It's positive feedback.
that's my son.
Oh, well, that's
Hey,
great.
Seb.
And he is an editor, yeah. So, runs in the family.
I'm waiting for your cat to type something.
Yeah, maybe it's on my iPad. Speaking of that Aussie accent and that Aussie photographer, we're joined today by Greg Carrick, who is a outer Melbourne-based photographer with a history in photojournalism. And he's a very clever man because, like me, he shoots Fujifilm mostly at the moment. In fact, our daily carry is even the same camera, the Fujifilm XC4. So welcome to the show, Greg. Great to have you on board.
Hey, Greg.
Thank you very much, Greg.
Okay.
And of course, we're joined by Jim and Justin from Team Lucky Straps. Morning, guys. How you
Morning.
doing?
Hello. Good morning.
And we might just kick off with catching up with Greg first of all, unless Jim or Justin, you have any pressing news you want to jump straight into.
No pressing news here. Just packing
Nothing
camera
pressing.
straps.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, Greg, why don't you tell us a little bit about your photography life, your journey into photography, what got you started and what you've been doing with yourself over the decades and what you're doing now.
Well, cast your mind back, kiddies, to the early 70s. And I was going through high school, and back then a teacher said to the whole class, this is reality. 1/3 of you are going to go on to tertiary studies. 1/3 of you are going to go out and get a job. And 1/3 of you are going on the dole.
Wow.
And that's exactly what happened.
That went straight to the heart, inspiration.
Yeah. Because back then, to get to tertiary, you had to pass what was in HSC. So Form 6 or Year 12, you had to do that successfully to get into tertiary. Nowadays, you got all sorts of paths available to you, which is much better, I think. And I wanted at that stage to be a photojournalist, using my camera for media. I didn't pass. So that door shut immediately. There was no other way to get into it. So I cast around just looking for a job, and I ended up being accepted to do a printing apprenticeship in a newspaper company. I had no idea what I was getting into. I turned up on my first day at work, nice clothes, which was totally ridiculous because by the end of the day, I was black with ink. The big newspaper presses, they're bigger than a house. They are double story. They're longer, wider than a house, and they're incredibly noisy and really dirty. Ink just floats through the air with these things. But I did my apprenticeship in printing with newspapers, and I've been involved in newspapers pretty much ever since. Now, what's this got to do with photography? Well, it comes into it. But in the newspaper industry, you name a job in it, and I've done it. And I'm not kidding, because in the end, I've actually owned and run a couple of local newspapers. So I had to do every stage of that trade, including photography. So I was able to pick up my cameras again and use them for work, use them in that industry. So long story short, I ended up, there was a battle of local papers in my area. A bigger mob came in and there wasn't room for me with my smaller paper and them, big conglomerate. So I said to them, you do the paper, I'll take photos. They said, yeah, that's fine. They didn't want to battle either. So I ended up for years then being a photojournalist at last. And it took decades, but I got there in the end and didn't have to do tertiary after all.
I love it. You found a way around the system. That's awesome.
Yeah. If I can't take photos for newspapers, I'll make my own newspaper.
Wow.
That's perfect.
Nice work.
Buy away.
Can I just dial back a little bit there, Greg? So what was it that appealed to you back in high school? What was it that appealed? What was the appeal with photojournalism?
Well, I had cameras at that stage. When I was very young, my father gave me his box Brownie, which I still have. And it didn't get a lot of use because, you know, I was a kid and the film's expensive and all that sort of stuff. But when I was a teenager, I ended up going to the local camera store in Frankston where I grew up and didn't have a lot of money. So I bought the cheapest SLR I could find, which was at that stage a Mamiya something 500 and a lens. And I had that for several years. Eventually got a bit more money, ended up then with a Olympus OM1, which I still have as well. And that was a beautiful camera. I really enjoyed taking photos. I didn't do any formal courses about it. And they were more almost street type photography that I was gravitating towards. And that sort of stayed with me. I still love doing that. And street photography and photojournalism are fairly closely linked because both of them try to capture reality without manipulating things. So yeah, you can do street portraits and all that where you talk to people and have them set up and you can do all that sort of thing, but usually it's very candid. And photojournalism has pretty strict rules about that. You're not allowed to manipulate things when taking the shot and also post-processing. You're not allowed to get rid of things, add things, all that sort of stuff. You're pretty much limited to cropping. And that style of photography really suited me down to the ground. So when doing photojournalism, you had to be able to cover all sorts of situations in one day. Like a wedding photographer, you'll go along and your whole day is all about the wedding. It's all about capturing the best you can of that scene. But you imagine doing an event like that, a formal sort of thing, and then getting in your car and driving to do a football match. And then getting in your car, driving to do a community event. And then getting in your car and because you just got a call, there's been a bad accident down so-and-so, and you have to drive there and photograph that. So you have to be able to cover all sorts of genres in one day with one set of gear. And doing that for years taught me a heck of a lot. And it was good in the sense that you become very flexible. You become very adaptable. You have to think on your feet. You have to do things and get things right because there's no second chances. You can't say to people, at the football match, oh, can you kick that again? I missed it, you know. But it also means it's hard to develop a style. And some people say, oh, to be a successful photographer, you have to have a style. You can't do that when you're switching and swapping between genres at the drop of a hat. So there's good points and bad points about it.
Yeah, for sure. Quick
That's
shout
really
out to
interesting.
Woody Mallory from Virginia, USA.
Hey, Woody.
Good to have you here with us.
Hey,
Woody.
Woody.
Wow, what time is it over there?
Oh, it'd
Must
be
be
about
about
4
4,
or 5
yeah.
p.m. Yeah,
Wow.
perfect afternoon viewing.
It is perfect afternoon viewing.
It's super interesting to hear you talk about it from that perspective. That being obviously, it's almost like you're a technician, you're a camera operator. You need to be a skilled camera operator in any situation, as opposed to an artist or something like that.
Yeah.
But I'm sure. It probably feels that way. I've felt that way before, where you don't have a style, but maybe other people could see your style developing, but because you were so immersed in the work that you were doing, maybe you didn't see it, but maybe other photojournalists could see it. I don't know. Is that something that you ever talked about other photojournalists with?
Yeah, it is a bit of a small world with photojournalism, and we don't often get to meet because we're working in different areas, different days, that sort of thing. And also, we're all contract. I wasn't on staff.
Oh, okay.
So I rarely went into the newspaper offices. I worked from home. I went out to do the jobs, came back home, did the processing, emailed them off. I could count on one hand the time I met my bosses, But yeah, it's very hard to self-critique in no matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because you're so focused on doing certain things, you're not outside yourself, whereas everybody else is. So they see things and your work quite differently than you do.
And Greg, obviously, the process for you for photojournalism, I mean, today, you could probably speak more to this, but today photojournalism is, sorry, for anyone listening, I've got people doing construction work outside my window, literally.
It's fine. We can barely hear it. It's no good.
Right,
I mean, it's all good. Not no good.
Not no good. Okay, thanks. Yeah, vote of confidence. Greg, sorry. Pretty much anyone with a smartphone can contribute to photojournalism these days, and often you see smartphone footage of events that suddenly take place. But when you were shooting film, I imagine that there'd be considerable time pressures to get back, process the film, print the film, and that obviously all takes time for chemical processes and the like, let alone the hands-on time. How did you cope with that, end-to-end process?
Well, it's funny because back in the film days, people had that expectation that things would take a bit of time. So to them, getting something instantly means several hours. And that was fine. Whereas nowadays, that's not acceptable.
They want it in seconds.
Yeah, but the process evolved. It wasn't film, bang, digital. There was an actual evolution from film to digital because when I first was doing photojournalism with film, I would then, you have to develop your negs, make prints, scan them into your computer, and then get them to the client. And then scanning improved, and all of a sudden you could get your whole roll scanned onto a CD. And that was quicker. Everything was done for you. You could either give them the CD then or email. You could get them off the CD, put them into your computer, because computers were also developing at the same time. I remember doing it before Windows. So you had DOS and you were trying to find programs that could handle pictures, which was
so the
difficult.
kids playing along at home, DOS was like one of the earliest. It'd be a stretch to call it an operating system. It was.
That's what I was.
Yeah,
I was like, which one of us is going to explain this to people that
Basic.
were born?
I can't remember what DOS stands for. I'm sure someone knows, but basic
disk operating system.
Yeah.
There you go. Basic commands and functions for computers were used DOS.
Yeah. So when Windows came along, it was an absolute revelation, and we thought it was incredibly amazing and freeing. Windows and Mac I won't talk about Mac because I didn't get into Mac till later. I put up with Windows for way too long. But the programs that then started to come out were, they really changed the industry. You had Adobe coming along, starting to make Photoshop. Before that, you had other WYSIWYG programs that sort of ended up being swamped by Adobe, then disappearing into the ether. But Photoshop was in a battle as well. There were other programs that were also trying to be the industry standard. And it took years, really, for Photoshop to become dominant. So there was a big mix of people using different programs.
Greg, would you say you were an early adopter of digital, or were you a holdout? Were you I'm going to stick with film until forever? Like which end of the spectrum were you on, or somewhere in the middle?
More an early adopter.
Nice.
Some of the real early digital cameras that came out were like with 3 megapixels and stuff. They were fantastic because you got to think about the end use of your photos. The end use of my photos was it's going to be printed in a newspaper. So you could give them the highest quality photo you wanted. It's still going to be ink on newsprint.
Yeah.
So
the quality's not great.
Yeah, that's right. So 3 megapixels was fine. And there was an early Konica Minolta, the Dimage. They were absolutely amazing things. They had a zoom range from like 18 to 270 or something built into this little plastic thing. Took macro shots as well. Really light, compact, brilliant cameras. I've still got one. And eventually, digital developed, and you ended up with 6 megapixel early Nikons, the D40 or whatever. And at the time, 6 megapixels was pretty much more than enough. You're very comfortable with that size. You could do a lot with it. When processors sort of evolved and you ended up with things like 12 megapixels, we thought, who on earth would want 12 megapixels? That's ridiculous, 6 megapixels is enough. And now look where we are.
It's crazy. It's crazy now. I mean, we've been obviously pretty closely involved in this Canon R5 launch, and they launched the R1 at the same time, which is their first flagship professional camera in the new mirrorless system. They sort of held out for a fair while to release that. They're a little bit behind the other brands in having a flagship mirrorless.
They're waiting for the Olympics.
Yeah, exactly. And probably for the camera to be ready in their eyes for professional use. And the internet has exploded because it's 24 megapixel, whereas everyone else's flagship now is 45 to 50. And the internet is absolutely hammering Canon for the fact that there's not enough megapixels in this professional body. And I want to make a video, but I haven't had time because of what we're doing at the moment. But I think maybe the general world has lost sight of what a flagship body always was for photojournalists, and that despite the fact that Sony have got the A1 50 megapixels and Nikon have the Z9, which is 45 megapixels, that wasn't always the focus of those bodies. It was about speed and reliability, and speed of delivery, high ISO performance, all that sort of stuff. And I'm a bit confused about why everyone thinks it's kind of a failure of a camera when its buffer depth is double what Nikon and Sony's are. Like you can shoot 1,000 raw frames without hitting the buffer. It's insane. At 40 frames a second.
I think the big thing with the megapixel count is that, for well over 10 years, camera brands have been telling us that it's all about megapixel and autofocus.
Yes.
And if anything, it's dumbing us down as to what good photography is. That's a whole nother story. But we've been marketed at relentlessly for over a decade about this megapixel race. And it's only now just starting to kind of fall off a bit. It's less of a selling point. It's definitely there still, but it's not so much about this is our top stat or spec for this camera.
Yeah.
It's only just starting to fade off again. And I think it's brave of Canon to ignore that. I mean, and they're just as responsible for it as any other brand.
True.
But it's brave of them to ignore that and focus on, operability, professional performance, deliverability, speed of use, and the sort of features that someone that is working in Greg's past industry of photojournalism needs. That they need fast reliability. They don't need it to be billboard size necessarily.
Because everyone's sort of forgetting. There's all these little, and maybe it's Canon's fault for, like you say, they push when they've got it. They push the megapixel thing hard, and maybe not pushing these specs enough to reviewers, or putting reviewers in a situation to really capitalize on these new enhancements. But it's got 100% autofocus coverage of the entire sensor. Like Sony don't have that on any of their cameras. Nikon don't have that on any of their cameras. So we've gone from DSLRs where, your autofocus coverage was this. Remember that? And then you get a pro body and it was this. And then all of a sudden it's literally the entire frame. You can focus on any point in the frame. There's so much to that camera that's getting pushed aside. And I would love to, because Jim's an ex photojournalist as well. Greg, you're an ex photojournalist, but I'd love to hear right now in 2024, I'd love to hear from some photojournalists that are looking at these cameras, that use these cameras, and be like, are you disappointed in 24 megapixel, or do you not even care? Is that because where are news photos going now? That obviously you had the issue. On the internet. They're going on the internet. They're going on to smartphones.
As long as they're sharp, they don't need to be. They're sharp, and they've got enough ISO range, which they're all going to have now.
And for the 1 in a million photos that maybe ends up on a billboard or something, obviously maybe more from the Olympics that end up in larger formats. But even still, with the quality of 24 megapixels, if it's a good photo, surely.
It's a good photo.
I don't know. Maybe I'm not in touch with it. But
what you send to the papers will be between 3 and 6 megapixels. So what do you need all these extra for? Cropping. But you're trying to get the whole shot in one shot. You don't really want to crop.
Yeah.
So
even if you do, there's what's the AI driven software, and it's got the megapixel upscaler.
Yeah,
and the denoise,
which Canon's got built into this camera now, but no one's really been able to test it to see whether it's useful.
They've trained these things to fill in the pixels. But
which should be only on that rare occasion where you capture something brilliant, but you weren't in the right. It's sort of almost luck that you caught it, and then you're like, it'd be great to blow this up or whatever. But like you guys say, if ideally you're framing the shot correctly. From the beginning.
And if you are doing photography for high gloss print magazines, the few that still circulate, you're not running around with an R1.
No, well that's what the R5's for. It's they've got both the anyway. I went into a dark hole of YouTube videos yesterday, and I was like arguing with my computer for a while. And I thought about making a video on it, but maybe this is enough to get it off my mind.
Next time, film that for us, mate. We'd love to see that.
I might do that.
Then a reaction video.
Just while I've derailed the show, I might as well bring it. Woody's actually got a question, which I'm sure we're going to get into this at some stage anyway. But Greg, what is your preferred camera system? Woody's a Nikon user.
Which Greg are we talking about?
Oh, well, that's a good question. Which one, Woody?
I'm assuming
both
do it,
but you both can answer.
We can say it in unison.
Well, I was a Nikon user.
Okay.
I used. I always had a twin camera setup, so I'd have two Nikons with different lenses because you didn't want to swap lenses when you're out there working.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd have a double sling, and you'd shoot. You'd literally drop that camera and pick up the other one. And I used Nikons for several years before.
What was?
What? You go, Jim.
I was going to say, what was the last one you used?
That's what I was going to ask.
They were APS-C.
Mm-hmm.
They were the D5300s, things like that.
Okay. Did you ever use the D500? That the sort of that final Pro APS-C that they brought out?
No, I'd switched to Fuji by then.
Okay, that was a pretty good camera. That D500.
Mm.
We've still got one.
We've still got one.
Around.
Yeah.
So then the Nikons were good. I did enjoy them. Funny, looking back on those photos now, to me, they're very noisy.
Yes.
The Nikon images weren't anywhere near as clean as when I switched to Fuji. Now, I don't know why. It's just the way it was.
Advancements in that crop sensor technology, maybe
It's
over the
Fujifilm
time?
magic.
It's
the unicorn sprinkling.
Fairy dust on it.
On the sensor.
Yeah. We've lost your camera. We've lost your image.
You're just.
But we can still hear you, so that's nice.
Yeah. So then I switched to Fuji, and that was because they reminded me of my Olympus OM1. You had all those manual dials, and although the Fuji, the Olympus, the shutter speed was on just behind the lens, unusual placement. But I was so used to doing everything manually while the camera was up to my eye that the PASM dial on the Nikons, that's all I had, so that's what I used. But when Fuji came out with their system of ergonomics, I just took to it like a duck to water. Yeah.
What was the first Fuji you bought? Like, what was the camera that made you switch?
The other Greg's gonna love it's fun. I picked up an X70.
Okay.
And a very strange camera to use as a photojournalist, but I tried.
You were still working as a photojournalist when you switched. I thought you might switched afterwards.
No. So I had my Nikons and I went out with them, but I took my Fuji X70 as well. Right, and I just trialed that to see how it would go. And the image quality coming out of it was absolutely brilliant. I loved the ergonomics of using it. So from there, I went to an XT2 and an XH1, and that replaced my Nikons. No longer use Nikons. I had the XT2, XH1, different lenses on the sling still, and that was my working gear.
Yeah. Nice.
And I still have both those cameras.
How many cameras do you have?
I've
heard that a number of times now.
Yeah, we need to see these cameras.
Yeah.
That's a lot of cameras.
What's the head count of?
I have gotten rid of some.
Spoken like a true camera addict. I sold one.
Yeah, I did. I bought 5, but I sold one. I did sell my X70 in the end. It took years. In fact, I had 2. My first X70 fell apart from use, so I replaced it. And I tried the X100. I bought the V when you could buy them. And of course, everybody's raving about the X100 V. I used it for 2 years. It never gelled with me. I never enjoyed it. It was a good tool, but it never inspired me at all. I must be a weirdo.
No. You know, I had the same experience because my first Fuji was the X100, the original.
Yeah,
and I sold that. Unfortunately, I love that camera. And I picked up a V, or was it the 4? I think it might have been the 4, and I owned that for less than 6 months, and it just didn't click. It just didn't click with me. I don't know why. It just didn't feel the same. And I mean, I had an X70 and an XT3.
Yeah,
at the time, or 4, but yeah, and I sold that really quick as well. So you're not a weirdo. Well, we're both weirdos.
Yeah.
No, you guys just aren't on TikTok enough. Jim, you've got sitting there the original X100.
Yeah.
The first
Not the
one.
V.
No, it's not the V. It's quite a few series before that, and it's a little bit worn, but I think it's worth hanging on to, that camera.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So the X100, didn't fit. I ended up replacing that with the XE4, and the XE4 can either be an X70 or an X100, depending on what lens you put on it.
Yep.
And the XE4 is just beautiful camera. But for working
too.
For working,
does it have a viewfinder? Sorry.
Yes.
It does have a viewfinder. Yeah.
Digital only. Doesn't have the hybrid.
No.
The X100 or the X Pro.
And is the viewfinder on the side, like a rangefinder style?
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe I want one of those. Yeah, that looks cool.
It looks a lot like a compact Leica. Mine's mounted up there. I can't show you at the moment because it's all wired up, but it's a great little camera, and it takes all the Fuji.
It's got the full flip up screen like the X70.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So I wonder, how old is that camera? Like, is it due for an update, or is it fairly recent? It's due for an update.
It's about 3 to 4 years almost.
Yeah.
3 years at least. We're due for an update of the XE range. We're also due for an update of the X Pro. I think we talked about that last week a little bit, but the X Pro 3 was the last one. And that, gosh, I went to the launch of that in Sydney. That was at least 4 years ago, I reckon. Probably just on 4. It was just before COVID. Yeah, it was pre-COVID. It didn't sell as well, I don't think, the X Pro 3. I think they overpriced it. They overspec'd it in terms of the big focus was on the finish, like this special alloy coating that they put on them, and you could opt for, I think there's 3 different colors and 2 different finishes of one of the colors at least, and it was scratch resistant, but it was a fingerprint magnet at the same time. Gorgeous camera. Yeah, that's it, the Duracoat. So wonderful camera. It just it missed the mark in terms of they went too heavy on the the look and the appeal, which is a big part of Fujifilm's brand, is how good the cameras look. But I think I think everyone just assumed it would be a great camera to take photos with. The marketing wasn't great, and then pandemic hit and missed opportunity for
if an X Pro 4 comes out, I'll definitely be looking at it and seeing whether I can offload the Q3 to something a lot more affordable and probably a little bit more flexible, because you know what, I bought the 28mm lens for my Canon system, which they've got this little pancake lens. I can't show you.
Yeah, I saw that on your. I saw that on your vlog when you went to Sydney last week.
It's awesome. It's really lightweight. It makes the R5 a very lightweight sort of camera that's obviously very, very powerful. I'm using it for my webcam at the moment, and that lens is awesome. But I can't, and I assume Fujifilm can do this. I don't know why you can't do it on a Canon camera, but the way I like to shoot, if I'm not shooting manual for like something professional or whatever, if I want to kind of have it in an auto mode, I want to have the shutter speed set to auto, which you can do on the Q3, the ISO set to auto. I want to control my aperture, and then I want a dial that's easily accessible for exposure compensation. That's just how I like to do auto. I know I can pick the camera up and it'll take a photo and it'll be exposed correctly. Whereas sometimes with manual, if you're going from outside to inside to outside and stuff like that, you're doing a lot of setting changes. And when I'm just traveling and stuff, I like it to be a bit more simple. You can't do it on the R5. It's really weird.
Yeah. It doesn't have like an auto ISO setting. You could just
you have to put it on aperture priority and then auto ISO, but then you can't customize the dials in aperture priority to where you want the exposure compensation to be. It sort of automatically selects what it thinks aperture priority is, whereas when you're shooting with the Leica, it's not in aperture priority. It's just you can select if you want the shutter to be in auto, the ISO to be in auto, or the aperture to be in auto. Like they're all independent. It's not a mode. It's just what do I put? Does Fujifilm have that? Can you just set the shutter to auto on that dial on the top?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. And so you can just set
put on auto. You can put your aperture wherever you want on auto or aperture priority. You've got your exposure compensation dial right here.
Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you shoot
And
in,
then some of
in
the-
manual
Sorry.
or in? Sorry, I was just going to see whether do you shoot manual or do you put it in an automatic mode of some sort, or how do you like to do it?
I'm so used to shooting manual from the film days that's just how I work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas I shoot.
It doesn't mean
full
auto is bad. It's just I'm so used to having control over everything, including nowadays. I use third-party lenses, dumb lenses. They're not connected to the camera, so
Dumb lenses.
yeah, manual focus as well. So I'm
Yep.
I'm sort of doing manual everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because I'm old.
With my Fujis, I'll do manual aperture, because almost every lens has a manual aperture ring. I think every current lens now does, and I love the
clickies.
clickiness of the. That's the Pancake 27 mil. Sorry, there's a machine outside. But the shutter speed, the aperture, and the ISO, I control those all manually. I use autofocus. But I can switch. It's so fast and quick to switch your settings and dial in based on the light and the situation and, how you want to freeze time. So
I think it might be because I shoot everything manual in every other situation and always have weddings, sports, everything else. I think it's just a mindset thing where if I want to be a little bit less, I don't know, a little bit more relaxed, where I'm just strolling around and just taking photos and not thinking about it too much. It might be that. That's what I really liked about using that way. And that's how I shot with the Leica the entire time that we traveled in the States. I used manual focus a lot, but I just really liked not having to worry about my exposure. The only thing in my mind with the exposure was what aperture, how much depth of field do I want, and then do I want the photo to be lighter or darker? And I just didn't worry about the shutter speed or the ISO. I just didn't think about it. It was nice, a little bit, a little bit less on my mind.
So Greg, other Greg, other GC, what sort of projects and work are you invested in at the moment?
I'm glad you asked. I have a list. It's funny, as a prelude to that, now I'm retired. I've had to go through a whole process of learning why I want to use a camera. Because for years, I've taken photos for other people. Okay, so all the photos I take have to please other people. That's the client. They give me money for it. Now, no one's paying me to take photos for them. So I have to take photos for myself. And that's been a long process of trying to figure out what type of photography I actually like. And it might sound strange. It's taken me a couple of years.
Not at all.
So I've tried different things. I like street photography. So I went on a street photography binge and developed a style that I find really suits me. And to do that, I had to invent a new way. Well, I call it a new way. We all know the exposure triangle. I worked with the exposure square. Now, to get that, Fujifilm's good for this because everything's manual. So I was out on the street in Melbourne doing street photography. So the style I wanted was a bit blurry, a bit grainy. So I thought, right, I have to have a low shutter speed. So I went down to 1/8 of a second. Then I thought, okay, I want most things in focus. So I wanted zone focus. So I was on, say, f11. And then I like grain in street photography. So I was very high ISO. Now, high ISO, slow shutter speed means everything's really bright. So I had to get around that. And with me only wanting, I set my shutter speed, I set my aperture, I set my ISO. So what could I adjust? I didn't want to adjust any of them, but I still had to control light. So I had to invent a fourth thing to do, and that was variable ND filters.
Mm-hmm.
So you have your exposure triangle set, and you slap on a variable ND filter, and that's the only thing I changed when I was doing street photography. I just changed how much light was getting into the lens. So that's my exposure square. And
that's a fun way to shoot. It's just so simple, you know, like mindset wise. It's like I was saying before. I just want to change the exposure compensation. This is even simpler again. You've literally just got one thing to twist, and that's your control.
That's all I changed. I just moved the variable ND. I ended up with a whole series of photos I put in a book, and like there's one there. So they're blurry, they're grainy, they're high contrast, black and white, and I wanted as much. I was also rebelling, okay, because you go on YouTube and everybody says, and in the whole photography world, these are the rules. You got rule of this, rule of that. You must not do this, you must do that. And I was I made a list of all these things that we're supposed to do, and I threw them all out and I did the exact opposite. So people would say, got to protect your highlights. Okay, don't want to blow things out. So I went out there and I made them look like a bomb had gone off. Really bright highlights, blowing everything out, really dark, deep blacks that you could no longer pull anything out of. I wanted that because that is what you see on the street. You go for a walk in Melbourne at night, you've got really dark places, you got bright light shining at you, and you're told, oh, you need to control that. Why? That's reality. You know, the lights are so bright, you have to squint. So I wanted that in my photos. So I was trying to break as many rules as I can that people were telling me to do. And I ended up with photos, the best photos I've ever taken, really. And I love it, the freedom of doing that. It became more art than just photos. Yeah, taking photos for other people.
That's good. It's good that you refound the passion. It's definitely, I resonate with that, with just taking photos for other people. That you often don't know. It's just a tool. It's like, I'm sure you don't pick it up. You know, a lot of people wouldn't pick it up after hours.
Yeah.
No. And
I'm also in a photo group out here, Yarra Ranges Photographic Society, and every month we have we're given a topic, and then an outside person comes in and judges or evaluates. So we have evaluation nights every month on certain topics, and pretty much without fail, the people evaluating go through all those rules. Rule of this, rule of that, protect your highlights, blah, blah, blah. And I'm throwing in pictures that break all those rules, you see. And they're staring at my photos. And some comments, one judge looked at one of my photos and said, this is a joke. This is a waste of my time.
Wow.
Which I loved, because that was exactly what I was, you know.
Yeah. You're there for the art, not for ticking the box
not
of
to
each.
tick a box of what a photographer should be doing.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, is it a good photo or not a good photo? Don't worry about anything else.
For me now, a good photo is something that I'm happy with. Don't care about anybody else. I'm not taking photos for anybody else except me. So if I'm happy with it, it's good.
Yeah.
Then I went to another project, which I call no light photography. Low light photography is one thing, but no light, I like doing seascapes. So what I do is maybe after one of my radio shows here goes till midnight. So I do my radio show, jump in the car, and I drive down the peninsula to Cape Schanck or Flinders or somewhere. And there'd be no moon, and I know there's rocks out there and there's waves coming in, I can hear them. So I'd take GFX 50R and put it up on a tripod, and I wouldn't be able to see what's in front of me. And I would take an 8-minute exposure just to gather enough light. And then I'd see, oh, okay, the rocks are over there, and I'd adjust my camera composition to suit, take another 8-minute shot. And the camera can gather enough light to see. There's no hope of your eyes seeing what's in front of you. So you have to use the camera like that. And I'm getting photos that, to me, I haven't seen before. Because who in their right mind would take photos in the absolute dark, you know? So I'm having a lot of fun doing, no light photography like that.
That's that one's super interesting. I've got a few questions from the me trying to justify gear purchases. Do I need to buy a medium format camera to try this technique? Is that what you're telling me? I have to go and buy a GFX?
Absolutely not.
Damn.
But I find they do process things a lot better.
Yeah.
Just because of the larger sensor. So
what do you do for the 8 minutes?
Stand around and try not to fall in the water. Because I have been in situations where I'm at, you have to time the tide, okay? You can't do it at high tide. You have to do it at low tide because you're out there on the rocks trying to photograph other rocks. There's waves coming in and out around you. Mm-hmm. And there are times when I'm precariously set up on a rock and there's waves and water coming all around me, and I know the tide's going to come in soon, and I can't really see anything. So it's a bit of fun in that sense.
Where can we see any of these photos? Have you got any of them on the interwebs somewhere that we can look at?
Yeah, I've got a YouTube channel with some of these things. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll drop the link to Greg's YouTube channel in the comments.
Yeah.
So anyone can check it out. Don't go now. But go
not stick around, folks.
Stay with us.
Stay. I've seen some of Greg's work because Greg and I follow each other on socials, but also Greg and I are both members of a Fujifilm community here in Australia, the Fuji XOS Facebook group. And I often marvel at some of Greg's work. In fact, in his early days of street photography, I convinced Greg to provide some photos for a shot kit article that I was preparing around the early days of the pandemic. So when the pandemic first hit and the world went into shutdown the first time, what we were collecting photos from photographers who had gone out all over the world to show the impact. And Greg supplied some images from those days, and that was kind of my first introduction to Greg's work as a photographer.
I had fun doing that. I went into Melbourne on the first lockdown and wandered around Melbourne from dawn till probably almost lunchtime, taking photos during a weekday, and the city was deserted. It was absolutely staggering. So I'm glad I took that chance, because historic time. And to me, those photos show Melbourne that in a way you'll never see it. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we hope. It was like On the Beach. Remember that film? Back in 1959.
Showing your age, mate.
End of the world.
Did they have films back then? I thought it was just
films?
Didn't they put them up and then someone played piano while you watched the silent movies?
In part of the film, they actually came to Melbourne, and it was the end of the world, apocalyptic time, and Melbourne was empty, and it was like that.
Oh, wow.
So this isn't the best way to show off your work, because it's YouTube photos on YouTube, but I just wanted to have a quick look, and this
4 minutes.
Yeah, that's so cool. So were these 4 minute exposure? 4 minute exposure. So you couldn't see anything. You would just set it up, focus based on like zone focus,
Yeah. So with manual focusing on the Fujis, you can see where your focus point is. They've got a sort of a slider down the bottom of the screen. You can see whereabouts the focus is. So I remember like that photo, You see the horizon, the light there. All I could see with my eye was just a tiny spot of it. I couldn't see the rocks or the waves or the clouds. You just have to wait for the camera to show you in the end.
Yeah, wow. It's a very interesting way of shooting. I've never, the closest you get to it is kind of is night sky photography, but you know, you can see the stars. You can usually see the horizon line. What anything that's black isn't the sky, so you sort of work around that, and then you do trial and error. This is less feedback than that.
Yeah.
That one is awesome.
Now that one, I'm standing on the edge of a rock, and in the dark,
on top of
8 minutes
mountain.
trying. I'd be spending that 8 minutes trying not to move.
Yeah. And hopefully you're not going to, tripods are going to fall in.
I was going to say, what sort of tripod are you using that also to get like stability over 8 minutes? Is it a big beefy tripod or something off Temu?
Tripods are another beef that I have.
Tell us about tripods.
Yeah, look, there's reviewers on YouTube that specialize in tripods.
Really?
And they are just reviewers. They're not photographers.
Yeah.
And I was listening to one years ago, and he recommended a certain tripod, which I then went out and bought. And in the end, I thought it was a heap of junk. So I had to do my own research. I ended up with a Freewell tripod, travel tripod, very light. I'll show you that later. But basically, even though it's a light travel tripod, I'm using that to hold up my GFX 50R and lens and doing 8-minute long exposures. And it's rock solid. There's nothing wrong with it. I do have a really beefy tripod in my studio at home, but I find it's very heavy, 2.5 kilos on its own, and lugging that up and down cliffs and stuff in the dark is a pain in the neck. So this travel tripod, that's where I was standing on the rock.
Wow.
This travel tripod weighs less than 1 kilo, and a lot of people would say, you wouldn't trust that, it's too flimsy, but I'm using a medium format camera on it.
Right.
I mean, if anything, the camera weights, the gravity of the camera is kind of cementing it a bit, isn't it?
So, it's a Freewell. I bought it. They didn't give it to me. Yeah, it's carbon fiber, and it's got a really great way of opening it. You turn the whole thing. One click.
That's good.
One clicky.
Yeah,
that's cool.
And the other thing about it I like, the head is an amazing design, because normally nowadays some people like pan heads, some people like tilt ball heads. Okay, this has both. It has a ball head, which where is it?
You sure you're not sponsored by these guys? Is there an affiliate link?
I'm not. I
need to click or something.
I had to buy this with my own money, but it's got a ball head, but it's also got a pan and tilt head, all built into one thing.
Is it Arca Swiss compatible for plates?
Yeah. And in fact, the plate it comes with it is also designed to hold a phone. So
that's cool. Is it?
I did a YouTube on it.
Is that handle thing? Can you remove that handle thing just if you were traveling in it and you want to be able to? Yeah.
Whole thing screws off.
Oh, I think I'm sold.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
It doesn't. For viewers and for Greg, it doesn't take much to convince Justin to spend money on camera.
No, I'm a sucker. I'm trying to become one of these YouTube reviewers so I can justify buying stuff.
Yeah.
But the difference will be I'll buy it and not just get it given to me and have an affiliate link. But
use it.
That is a very important point, because I found how much bias is there in YouTube videos of people reviewing stuff, and to me they're always bias. If there's reviewers out there who get stuff sent to them for free, and quite often they get to keep it, so they rev about their stuff, next week they're revving about the next thing. There's no reliability in them at all.
Yeah.
I simply don't trust them.
It really is a shame that that's how everything has ended up. Speaking of that, what sort of camera straps do you use, Greg? Just kidding.
Do I get kicked off if I say the wrong thing? Yeah.
There's something wrong with the stream. We lost Greg.
It is crazy that the review. It is a review industry now, and it doesn't mean everybody is part of the review industry. There are photographers out there that are putting content out that genuinely sort of use the gear, have a passion for the gear and stuff, but and also not too much of a slight to the people that say review gear almost for a living, because they do. There are some that put a lot of work into. I'm thinking more on the YouTube side of things, not so much written. There are some that put a lot of work into those videos. Who comes to mind is his name's on Gordon Lang. Very factual. He does almost all the camera. You know, he's not kind of like pushing this, pushing that. It's just he goes through all the specs. He does some tests. It's a factual review that goes for 30 minutes or whatever. And then he does the same for the next camera and the next camera. And it's quite clear that while his living is made from reviewing cameras now, I hope. I mean, he puts a lot of work into it. I assume he makes money out of it. He doesn't sort of seem to be constantly pushing, you know, the next thing or a link to an affiliate link or anything like that. So yeah, there's definitely people out there doing it in a less biased way, but there is also a lot of people just sort of, hey, I got this bit of gear sent to me and it's great, you should buy it.
Yeah, they're blatant about it. They do an unboxing and then tell you how good it is. You haven't even put a camera on it. But as far as bias goes, people like me who only review stuff that they've bought and used, we also have bias because we don't want to look like mugs. I've spent, $500 on this of my own money that I'll never get back. And I want to say it's good because otherwise I'm a moron. I've spent all this money on a dodgy thing, So we have a bias built in as well.
We got a call coming in.
Hello, call.
No. I hate phones. I just hung up on it. There's always bias.
That is a true thing, and you see it very strongly in if someone asks a question on the internet, because sadly I do end up in these areas that are full of comments and I'm like reading through Reddit or something like that, and someone will ask a question and the answers that always get given, and this makes sense because that's what they bought, but they always recommend the camera they've got or the bit of gear they've got, you should buy the Leica Q3, it's the best camera there is. And he's like, okay, what about the X100? Oh, I haven't tried that one, but you should buy what I've got. And it sort of becomes you recommend what you've used, which it makes sense.
You feel better though.
Well, you went through all the research and paid the money for it, so you feel like it was the right choice, and it's probably the right choice for someone else. But it does mean, you're right. There's always a bit of a bias there if it's gear that you've got.
For sure.
Confirm your own decisions.
Definitely.
So if we're still talking about my projects.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, of course.
The other project I've got, which has been ongoing, is weird lenses. Okay, now I do this.
How many lenses have you got, mate? Sorry, how many lenses? We never got an answer to how many cameras either.
Not as many cameras as I have lenses.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I interrupted.
But it's I find cameras can be expensive. Lenses are incredibly ridiculously priced, especially when you're doing something like the GFX system. So what are the alternatives? And because I'm now self-unemployed, not working for anybody, I can choose what sort of lenses I use to get what sort of photos, because I'm only here to please myself. So I'm using a lot of old lenses that might be a bit strange. Like here I've got a lens of a slide projector. Now, if you think about it, projector lenses are made to do the opposite of camera lenses. A camera lens collects light from in front of it and focuses behind. A projector lens collects light from behind it and focuses out front. So to put a projector lens on a camera is asking it to do something that it wasn't made to do. So what sort of photos do you get from it? You get brilliant photos. They're amazing. And they're so simple. This might have one element in it, as opposed to, 9 elements in 6 groups or whatever. And they're a lot of fun to use because they're totally experimental. You have to adapt them to your camera. So with the GFX, I basically have a helicoid, which allows focus in and out. And then I get 3D printed a mount that the weird lens can go into and then mount to the helicoid.
Wow.
So have you made these like the 3D printing, or is this something you've got from somewhere else?
My son-in-law does.
Okay.
Makes them for me on spec.
So he stays in the family as long as he keeps.
Yeah, that's right.
Keeps father-in-law happy with new toys, right?
And I end up with a great collection of weird lenses just to experiment with. On my GFX right now, I've got a 100-year-old lens from a Kodak Bellows Best Pocket camera.
Wow.
Which is very pancake. That's it at the end, just that little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of it is adapter and then helicoid.
So how does the helicoid work?
It just moves in and out.
And it's a fancy word for a screw.
Yeah, basically.
And how do you manage aperture, or you don't?
Yeah, are they fixed aperture lenses?
It depends on the lens. Like this one is fixed aperture; it's wide open.
Okay.
It's 2.8 or something.
So
there's no aperture specs. Control on that.
2.8 or something.
Yeah. Whereas this lens from the old Kodak camera has a little metal circle plate with holes drilled into it. And that's your aperture. And that's what it was like on the old camera.
Oh, wow. So you as you dial it, a different hole
appears.
Aperture appears. Oh,
yeah. Wow. And they're labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's no f-stop type things.
It's just setting 1.
Setting 1, setting 2.
It's like Alan Crum lights.
Different size diameter holes. So it depends on the lens you use as to how much control you have in that lens.
That's fascinating.
Okay. Tell me, what does that lens look like? Have you taken many photos with it? Like, how is it? If we put it through an MTF chart test setting, what sort of micro contrast are we getting in the corners? Is it?
You get the exact same photos that you would have got on the old Bellows camera.
Right.
So you get a photo, but forget about sharpness. There's no such thing. It's you're getting a digital photo that looks like it was shot 100 years ago.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah.
And then do you use the Fujifilm simulations with that as well, or do you edit your photos afterwards? Like, how are you shooting JPEG or RAW?
I always shoot both just by habit.
Mm-hmm.
I try to use the JPEG. If it's not good enough, then I'll go to RAW, and then you got more dynamic range and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But just because that old lens on digital camera doesn't mean it's going to be any better than when it was on a film camera.
Yeah.
Because that old lens has one element in it. Okay. So you got one piece of glass that you're relying on. Yeah. There's no corrections involved. There's no coding even. There's nothing. It's just a piece of glass.
That's really fascinating, Greg.
Yeah, it's a very cool idea.
Back in the day, that was pretty much state of the art. And one of those cameras was taken to the top of Mount Everest to cover that trip way back in the day by explorers, So people relied on those sort of things, and they did the job. Nowadays, we're all about corner-to-corner sharpness and blowing up things 400% to pixel peep, and it's just crazy.
With these adapters and stuff that you're making, are you selling them to people, or
No, not really. I mean, I could. It wouldn't be hard to sell this one because there are so many of these cameras and lenses out there that people would try it.
That's what I was going to say. It needs to be obviously needs to be a common, fairly accessible, cheap lens to make it worthwhile. I don't know. Maybe you got a business there.
Making the files accessible so people can print their own. There's sites dedicated to where you can upload your files and people can you can offer free or purchase. Put them behind a paywall where people can download the files and just print their own stuff.
Make them a few dollars, make them accessible, but put that money into the next lens you have to go and track down.
Yeah, there's so many things you can do with old lenses, like the Helios 44-2, world famous lens. Millions of them made. They're like Volkswagen Beetles, and so easy to take apart, which is a good thing because that lens is known for its swirly bokeh. But you can pull either the front or the back element off very easily, turn it round, put it back in, and you get incredibly swirly bokeh with focus just in the middle, and you get incredible effects from that sort of thing. Wow. So they're great lenses to experiment with.
Yeah.
And you won't get that from a modern lens.
What would it cost to pick up one of those today?
The old Helios?
Yeah.
About $50.
Wow.
50 to 100 Australian if you're looking at the lens.
Yeah.
But you can go to an op shop and you might see an old Zenit sitting there. It'll have a Helios sitting on it. And you get it for $20-$30, with a camera.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I've seen examples where people have gone into, op shops, and more so in the States than here, but even still, and they've found Leicas, like classic Leicas.
Yeah, that'd be a dream.
With a $50 sticker, and they've just picked up crazy bargains. I've never had such luck, so I've stopped going into them.
Yeah, op shops are good. The op shops around here know me. They got me on speed dial.
He's back.
We got some camera gear. Come and get it. And people give you things. So many times over the years, people have said, "Oh, we're cleaning out. Grandfather died. We're slowly going through the house. We came across this camera bag. They don't know what to do. They give it to me.
Yeah,
and there's old Pentax film cameras and lenses and stuff in there, and I've got a whole heap of these things at home because people just don't know what to do with them. They're giving them away.
And once you build up a reputation, that you're after these things, people go, "Oh, I've got to get rid of this camera. Oh, talk to Greg Carrick. He'll take it off your hands."
Yeah. And I never say no because you never know what's going to be in that bag.
Yeah.
Sounds like you need to have a garage sale at some stage.
Yes. Yeah.
Are you looking for some more cameras, Justin?
No, I'm not. No, I probably need to get rid of stuff too. I think have you guys heard of that happening? I think I've seen it somewhere, but like a sort of a swap meet for photographers. Is that a thing in Melbourne?
Yeah.
Because I've got a heap of stuff that it's too hard to sell it on Marketplace because it's probably not worth enough money to bother putting this $10 thing or whatever. But if I could take a few tubs and a table to a hall on a Saturday and everyone else is there too, and you just sort of sell stuff cheap, just to clear out the cupboards and someone finds what they've been looking for.
But I guarantee you'll come home with more than you went with.
Yeah. You're right. But still, I still want to do it. Is that a thing? Have you guys heard of it?
I've
heard. I haven't been to one.
But it does happen.
I have heard of them.
Maybe we should organise one.
Like car boot sales and markets.
Yeah.
I remember I went to, I don't know if it's still on, years ago, I used to go to the Dalesford market. It used to be on a Sunday at the train station, at the train yards.
Yeah.
They still do that?
Yeah, I don't know if they still do it.
Not sure.
There'd be,
probably.
Fruit, there'd be like local farmers selling produce and people selling old tools. There'd be like tables of old tools. People selling stuff they'd made, but there'd often just be trash and treasure.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'd see some camera gear in those places.
But I think we need to do a photography specific one.
Yeah.
I got so much junk that someone else might want. Old soft boxes and things that I bought while we were shooting weddings to try out different techniques and stuff like that. And now they're just all sitting around doing nothing.
I've still got the ice light.
I had one guy who
Probably.
used to run a camera store, and it died pre-COVID, and he ended up having a whole lot of stock left over. And he contacted me one day and said, "Oh, I'm trying to clear out my garage. Come around." I got darkroom equipment, new in boxes, never used, enlargers and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
That I thought, this is absolutely brilliant. I probably won't end up using it, but someone will end up one day with a brand new enlarger, never used.
Yeah. That's very cool.
That is very cool.
If you had to go and buy one,
they
wouldn't be cheap.
No, not at all. Even just finding a quality one secondhand would be a task.
Now, can I have a rant?
Oh,
sure.
You
Let's
can.
do it.
I've seen
Okay.
these before.
I've watched a few YouTube videos, so I'm ready.
All right, go for it. What's the rant, mate? Come on.
Okay, I hope no one from Fujifilm was listening.
They're not a sponsor yet.
I got this GFX 50R, which I think is going to be a cult camera. I love it. It's an absolute joy to use, but I'm not a professional anymore. I can't afford the lenses. The price of GFX lenses is ridiculous. It's probably okay if you're working with them, using them all the time, getting lots of money for your work. But as someone who's not a professional anymore, getting a GFX lens is crazy. I've been able to afford one, and that was the cheapest, 35 to 70.
Yep.
Because it's about $1,000. And the next step up, though, I wanted a wider angle, 20 to 35. It's over $3,000. I think it's close to $4,000.
It's 4,100 at the moment.
Yeah.
In Australia.
How can you afford a wide angle lens? That's ridiculous. So what I've had to end up doing is hunting for old vintage film camera lenses to cover the same range.
Yep.
So I've got a Pentax 18 to 35 here from the SLR days, and just the Pentax adapter to go on the GFX. This cost me, well, this cost me nothing. It was in a bag that someone gave me, but they're less than $100 to buy secondhand. This is 18 to 35 mil. I have to use this for wide angle on my GFX because Fujifilm do not make a cheap range of lenses for the GFX. They make a cheap range for the X or the XC, they're called.
What do I call them? The Fujicrons?
The XC.
Oh, the XC. Yeah, they're
not the XF. The XC.
Entry level.
Yeah, real entry level
options.
plastic type things, but really good optics still.
Yeah.
I wish Fujifilm would make a GFX-C range of lenses.
Yeah.
So, you can pick up a wide angle lens for $1,000 rather than $4,000.
I recently wrote an article for Shot Kit. I don't think it's been published yet. It's about the Fujifilm birthday one. Because Fujifilm's just turned 90 and they've only been in the digital game for 12 years. Or sorry, the X digital game. They were the first consumer-ready digital camera on the market, but the X series. And GFX is only about, 2016 at Photokina, they announced the 50S. So that's only 6 years. And at the moment, a couple of years ago, they went through what Greg was saying, where they launched I think the 35 was first, F2, Fujicron. Then they did the 23 F2 Fujicron, then they did the 50 F2 and the 16 F2.8. Now these were half the price of the kind of F1.4 wider apertures. And when I wrote this article, I said I think that in the next 10 years, before Fuji hits 100, they need to work on a cheaper range of GFX lenses, with that same, I guess, same sort of, here's what you can get. You can get a 55mm 1.7 for almost $4,000, or we can get you a 50mm f2.8 or f3.5 for half the price, or whatever it may be. But yeah, the GFX lenses are pretty expensive. The one that I reviewed, which was the 500mm, granted it's a whopper. You could use it to jack up a car. That was over $6,000. The 30mm tilt shift was it's a very specialist lens. It's an f5.6. That's 6,800.
Yeah.
What's their cheapest lens? Like their cheapest prime? What's their nifty 50 equivalent lens?
Not a teleconverter. They've got a 50 f3.5 for 1,650 at the moment. That's Australian. That's Fujifilm's price. You'd get it cheaper. It's an older. It's an older lens. It was an earlier lens. A friend of ours that's in the Fuji group, he's got the 50R, or at least he had it. I don't know if he still owns it. I think that was the first lens he picked up for it, because it's a relative pancake in terms of GFX lenses, and it looked perfect on the 50R. It looked like a rangefinder with a fixed lens.
Yeah, it's a sweet lens.
Yeah.
I saw it at the Fujifilm. What's their thing called? Their specialist
House
store?
of Photography.
House of Photography. I went in there and had a little look.
Oh, you did?
I did. Yeah, you got me. I have a thing for Fujifilm, and I would love to try the GFX system. But even in there at the House of Photography, I said if I was going to get one, I would want something like that 3.5 sort of normal lens, a smaller lens.
Yeah.
That's what I would sort of be looking to. And the guy actually put on a massive standard zoom. I can't remember which one it was, but it was pretty heavy. It was very front heavy, which I hate for something that would be, I want to move around with. And he was like, "Oh, you wouldn't want to get that if you were investing in a camera like this." And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, salesman.
I'll get both. Yeah.
He's a salesman.
Yeah, true. Very salesy.
Yeah, but it was still like, I don't know. Maybe I didn't explain clearly what I was looking for, but I sort of wanted to feel what it was like with a lighter lens. But yeah, I didn't think that lens would be $1,600 still. I thought it might be like $800 or something. Well, that's being a cheaper prime.
That's on the House of Photography website. If you went into a store, you'd pick it up in a sale for $1,000, $1,200 tops probably.
Yeah.
And they often do cash, and when they do cash packs on GF stuff, they're often pretty hefty cashbacks.
Yeah.
Because you are paying a premium up front.
Yeah. But, they have a lot of room to move on those lenses because they're like expensive cars. There's a lot of profit margin.
Yeah.
These lenses, there's a lot of profit margin. So your cashbacks, you might get 800, 900 back. You think, wow, that was what they were making. Plus more.
You think, why don't you just make that the price all the time?
Yeah. Then you'd sell more.
Don't get started, Justin. You sell products too.
Yeah, I know. We don't do cashbacks.
It's a rabbit hole. That's a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But it is interesting because the GFX, right, they've only got 19 lenses, and that includes 2 teleconverters and 2 tilt shift, which is fascinating that for a fairly new brand, as in the GFX range, it's only 6 years old, to already have 2 tilt shifts. I mean, one of them's almost $7,000. Granted, GFX is
architectural,
architectural workhorse. It's a pro body. But having said that, Fujifilm, when they released the most recent one, which was the GFX 100S Mark II, which I reviewed, that's their cheapest and most compact medium format, especially for a 102 megapixel sensor. And the marketing and the press release and the video that they streamed, it was actually our friend Charlie Blevins, who's going to be joining us at some stage on the podcast. Charlie works for Fujifilm Australia. He was the one that had the camera in his hand when it was first revealed to the world. And they filmed it in Sydney in a restaurant or something overlooking the beach. And throughout that whole presentation and all the marketing, it was about accessible medium format. Or they don't call it medium format because there's some debate over the formal sizing.
not quite
larger
format. Cropped medium format.
Not large, but larger format. And the whole marketing thing was around accessibility. So they've reduced the price, they've reduced the size. They talked about accessibility, portability, ease of use, and it was all of those things. It was still a very big camera with a gaping hole in the front of it and a massive sensor, but they're really pushing for medium format to be more than just an architect's workhorse camera.
Yeah,
they want it in the hands of more and more people. If they're going to invest in a sensor range that, and I think they'll ditch 50 megapixel. I think they'll just, this is my prediction, I think they'll just go to 100s, and they'll stick with 100s because it's cheaper to produce one sensor with one matching chip for all.
Yep.
Like what they're currently doing, they're trying to bump everything up to 40 megapixel in the X series.
And people don't see the benefits. You got the buy a Z8, buy a A7R5, buy a Canon R5. Oh, I'm at 50 megapixel anyway. And obviously there's other benefits to medium format that aren't megapixels. But when it comes down to choosing a system, that's a very hard sell to be like, it's the same. It's the same megapixels, but trust us, the quality's better.
Yeah. Your Q3 goes up to 60 megapixels. So in terms of the dots on the sensor, your Q3 is doing better than the 50S Mark II.
Exactly, and with a spectacular lens quality, but it's different. But that difference is a hard sell when it's not. You're looking at it in a shop and you can't really go out and test it in detail and see the difference in those two different systems. Yeah. Whereas you throw that 100 megapixel selling point in there, and people are like, "Oh wow, okay, this is going to give me a far superior image to what a full frame sensor will give me," and then it's an easier sell. So it would make sense if they pushed the whole range in that direction. It simplifies the range. Tell me this: are they going to do any more rangefinders in that system, or is that done?
Well,
because that's what I would want.
Rumors. I mean, Greg's got the original 50R. Beautiful camera, a little slow on the focus. I mean, all GFXs are a little slow on the focus system compared to the X series, and full frame Canons blow it away in terms of
Fujifilm aren't renowned for their autofocus.
It's improving,
but then I use manual focus lenses anyway, so I don't care.
But there's a couple of rumors circulating, and I dislike rumors, but it does lead us nicely as a segue into our news section. One of the rumors I've been seeing recently is that they're working on a rangefinder style GFX with a fixed lens, so it'll be like an X100 or like an X Pro with like that 50 mil GFX.
Now we're talking.
So that would be an interesting proposition. Pricing would be really important for them. And
is it going to be dedicated black and white?
Well, they did do a monochrome. There is a monochrome, or is it? No, there's an infrared GFX, I think. But it only sold in the States. It's either infrared or monochrome GFX. Might have that wrong. Anyway, but yeah, so there's rumors. I think they'll do 100R. There's a lot of love for the rangefinder style at the moment.
That's the one that might get me.
Yeah, I think 100R would be a nice proposition because the 50R was styled after an X Pro model, basically. It looks like an X Pro on steroids, and it's a gorgeous camera. And I think 100R would be in the works. Like I said, I think they'll just stick with a 102 megapixel chip sensor.
Makes
because
sense.
It makes sense in terms of cost to produce and tooling and machining and just the amount of unicorns that they have to employ to sprinkle the dust on the sensors. But I think 100R would make sense for them. I think they'll drop the 50.
What do you reckon? So what's the price of the cheapest 100? Is it the S2 or whatever?
That's the 100 S2. Let me just grab the latest retail.
I'm just trying to think of what a fixed lens camera would sell for.
So, this is an interesting point that you've raised. So $8,700 Australian at the moment for the brand new GFX 100S Mark II. It is the smallest and lightest GFX, I believe, especially with a 100 megatube sensor. So they're saying $8,700 is more accessible, which it is the cheapest of the range so far. And as production improves and more people buy them, then the cost reduces and all that sort of stuff. You drop a even if it is, say, that 50 megapixel, that 50 millimeter 3.5, which is what it would say, 1600. So you're looking at about, we'll say, we'll square it off at 10 grand. Yeah, that's a big chunk of money.
But this thing, where is it? There it is.
Yeah.
This was, what was this? 10 grand?
Yeah.
An M11 with the same sensor is 14.
Yeah.
And then a lens that's equivalent is another 8 or 10 or something.
But you
ridiculous.
see that little red dot? That little red dot on it makes people lose all sense.
I know, but what I'm saying is there some way they can justify the fact that this rangefinder fixed lens might actually be cheaper than an interchangeable lens body? You know, could we see it as a 69990 thingy type, you know, to try and entice people to buy it for TikTok like they did with the X100?
It's an interesting... The X100 is a powerhouse. It's a compact power. It has the same sensor, processor, and IBIS as an X-T5, which is their flagship photography camera, not videography camera, but it does do great videography. But Fujifilm are guaranteed additional sales on an X-T5 with lenses. So you have to buy a lens, even if it's the new kit 16 to 50, you're still spending money on more gear.
But what's an X-T5
They won't make any more money
cost?
on an X-T5. I think
isn't it dearer than an X? Yeah, it's dearer than an X100. That's what I'm saying. So it's like, you know, they can somehow basically put the same guts of a camera with a fixed lens together.
So
and sell
X-T5
it for less.
is 2,900.
Yeah.
And an X100 Mark 6 is probably around the same, 2,900.
Yeah. Okay, about the same.
It's about the same.
Got less speed. It's like it loses some features. The X-T5 is a more powerful camera, correct?
Yeah, it's more... Well, no, the X-T5, same sensor, same chip. But slower readout speeds on the X100. The X-T5 has a true weather sealing. It has dual card slots. It has boost power performance. It has the same autofocus, but I think it's faster. FPS is faster. The readout's faster. All that sort of stuff. The reason why the X100 is so expensive, part of it is fame, a little.
Yeah.
So
it never used to be that expensive.
No, and demand.
Yeah.
Like the demand, I think, is driving it a little bit. And look, why not? Fuji have got to make money. They're not going to make any more money on this camera. Once it's sold, you know, they might come to Lucky Straps to buy a premium leather deluxe wrist strap. But other than that, there's not a lot more to buy. Whereas when you buy a flagship XT, there it is. That's a prototype. You buy an XT5, you can spend another 10, 20 grand on lenses if you wanted to. Yeah.
And I mean, who knows? They might acquire some customers through the X100. You know, they play with the film simulations and stuff like that. But on the other hand, they also get people like me, a Canon shooter, just wants another body for, you know, a nice compact, high quality, and that's your only Fuji camera that you buy, and it just sits alongside the rest of your gear. And I'm sure that happens a lot as well.
Yeah, a good mate of mine, Athel, who will try and get on at some stage, he threw a tantrum one day, switched from Fuji to Sony. Won't go into the details. It was too dramatic.
Just wanted the full frame.
Yeah, maybe. He was just being a sook. But he jumped to Sony and he invested heavily in Sony, but he then went and bought an X100 5, I think he got. It's just his carry around day-to-day shooter because, you know, that's what they're for. They're ideal for that sort of stuff. In your bag all the time.
Yeah.
You know. Whereas walking out with his full frame, I think he had got a couple of A7s or something. Can't remember what it was, but working out with his full frame Sony and big heavy glass, that's a different proposition. You've got to rethink your bag and, you know.
Yeah.
But,
and you don't enjoy him.
It's more of it. And especially, you know, if everything's in a camera backpack and you've got to get your backpack off to get to your camera, I don't know. It kind of changes the whole dynamic of going out for fun shooting.
There's a solution to that.
There is a solution to that.
Well, no, I was actually being serious. That wasn't a camera strap plug. I was actually being serious. The camera bag that I use, the Mindshift rotation. I love that bag.
Is that with the little bum bag bit? Comes around to the front.
Let me see if I can show you.
All right. Well, while Justin's doing that, Jim, I've got a question for you. Last week we talked at length about the Lucky Straps Canon collaboration with the release of the R5 Mark II, which happened last weekend, and Justin was in Sydney for that launch event. And the reason why Justin was in Sydney is because Lucky Straps have released a limited edition Canon EOS R5 premium leather. It's one of the deluxe straps. Is it?
No. So it's our Slim 30.
The Slim 30. And we talked about how you can only get that strap. You basically have to buy a very expensive camera strap to get a free camera with it. Yeah. Have you got one that you can put on?
I don't have a Canon one, but I've got a non.
Oh yeah, so that's the Slim in the black and the, what do we call that? Claret?
Black one.
That Nikon of yours is focusing well, Jim. Oh no, there you go. You're back.
Focus.
Very sharp.
We talked about how you can only get the special branding strap, the special Canon strap with the purchase of the R5 Mark III. It's only the first 1,000 Australian purchases and 150-ish New Zealand purchases. Yep. Have you been receiving inquiries about people wanting that outside of the promo, the offer?
Not anymore. No, we had a couple at the start.
Yeah,
but no, not yet. I'm sure once it, it's quite down a little bit. I think once it's in shops and
last time maybe the emails got worse once they started arriving to photographers and they were posting the pictures on Instagram and everyone was like, "Hey, where do you get that from?" So that starts to spread a bit further because at the moment
you can get one. It's blind and has no Canon logo.
We can get your own logo on it. We can put the Camera Life logo on it.
Yeah,
if you want. Check this out. This is my backpack.
Yeah.
Right. You won't be able to see my face because I'm standing up. But so this
because you're a dentist.
Because I'm a dentist. This is Mindshift, which Mindshift are part of Think Tank Photo. And they used to operate as their own separate brand. Now they're all on the Think Tank website, and they're available through most camera stores in Australia, but no one seems to stock them. But it's got this flap here. You just unhook the flap. It's a magnet, and then you just and I can fit in this thing, in this kangaroo
small puppy.
Pocket. I could fit a kitten, probably Greg's cat, maybe. I don't know. Jim's mustache would get in here. But no, seriously, when I shoot mountain bikes, I have the R3 with 70 to 100 2.8, 16 to 35 2.8, and my 50 1.2, and my microphones.
Wow!
In this kit. So
can you lean forward just so we can see inside?
There's no cameras in here right now.
Yeah, wow, that's such a great shot.
So and look, it's magnetic. So I don't even zip. You can zip this up, but I don't zip it up. So this lid just magnets down, and then I swing it back around. Wow. This is a magnetic latch, bid lock. And then I'm off and running around again. So you look like a bit of a nerd because you have to wear the waist belt. Like you can unstrap this, but you have to wear. You have to wear the waist belt to be able to, to swing it around. Yep. But I can be out and shooting instantly. And then, cool. I usually, if I pull the camera out, if we're traveling or whatever, I either use the camera strap like across, but using camera strap across your body with a backpack isn't that comfortable. It's sort of, I'll come back down to you guys. Yeah. It catches on stuff. But I do have this carabiner, which I just hook a wrist strap to it. So if I've got the wrist strap on my camera, when I'm not shooting, it can just dangle here if I don't want to put it away. But most of the time, it's so fast to put the stuff in and out of the bag, you can just put it away as well. So that's my
you ride around with the camera.
No, not for mountain bike. That's only if I'm traveling, if I'm like wandering. But most of the time, I'd either have it in my hand or put it back away again. Because I either like to go just a camera strap and one body, one lens, and I'm out and I'm just it's a lot more freeing. I should be back down here.
Yeah, you sit down.
one body, one lens. Or if I do need to take gear, this is the backpack I like because I have everything I need quickly accessible. And then in the top, which has way more space for other gear, I've got the drone and like batteries and all that stuff. So if I need something slower to access is in the top. I'd highly recommend this. This is the middle size. There's a smaller one, which would be great for a Fujifilm kit. The 20 litre size. Yep. Or there's a bigger one, which I've had that as well. And I sold that. It's got more space for the top, but no more space in the bottom swing around bit. So I ditched it. It was too big. But yeah, if anyone's looking for something to access quicker, I don't have an affiliate link because we don't sell these or anything. Just get your local camera store. We could probably stock them. I've thought about it. I just don't know about shipping camera bags. They're a bit bulky, but I'm sure we could get to stock these probably because I love them. I love this bag. I've got the older edition as well. It's been around the world, everywhere that I've traveled. The older one and now this one. Remember, it's what I had in Cambodia, Japan, snowboarding.
Much faster
Bali,
than any other bag.
Across on scooters and stuff like everywhere. Anyway,
I found every time the first time I traveled, I took a big camera sling. No, actually, I took a big camera backpack. And it had one of those where you swing it around, like you take one shoulder off and you swing it around. It has and it was so annoying. It was so annoying that you have to kind of open this thing and then you can only access, like that. Pretty much like that. Yeah. It just really frustrated me. And then by the time I had my last trip, I was just shooting with, I think it was the XE4 and a 27mm, or maybe it was an XT. But either way, that's all I took. And I just had it on a wrist strap. And I just held my camera. And, I didn't even have a camera bag.
This is the only other thing that I used in the States, which is this Bellroy sling that's not a camera bag.
I think I've got it somewhere.
But it was for the Q3. If I needed to take it anything more than just the camera, I prefer just have the camera on a strap. Or if we were going to a sketchy area where I thought the red dot might make me a target, I would put it in this bag. But I liked this because it's not a camera bag. It was a lot slimmer than your average, a camera. I looked at the camera sling bags. They're these big boxy things, and I don't know, they weren't good at all. This easily fit. You could fit if you were a Fuji shooter, you could fit a body and two lenses in there easily. It just doesn't.
I've got that exact sling. I've got that same sling, and it's
good.
I've just picked up a new crumpler yesterday.
Oh yeah,
it's called the Billy.
The Billy.
I've got another crumpler which is a bigger one for everything, but this is really cool. Oh, the cats have been on it. And it would hold like that. It would easily hold, like an XT5 with a zoom.
Yeah.
Even a 50-140 probably. No, not quite. But,
and it's a camera bag, or is it just a general purpose sling?
It's just a general purpose. It's not one of their camera bags. I used to have only Crumpler because they're Australian brands and I like to support local. I used to only have Crumpler. And Bellroy are Australian design. They're made overseas. There's some of these, but Bellroy and Crumpler are both Australian brands.
Yep. Made overseas, but Australian brands. Yeah,
Australian brands,
which is probably the best you can hope for with camera bags. Realistically, it's pretty hard to manufacture those in Australia.
Yeah, it's they're good quality, and they, you get it if you do it right the first time. It'll last forever.
That's right. Speaking of buying stuff,
if Crumpler or Bellroy want to sponsor us, then
we're here. Hey,
we're here.
Hit us up. My sister's just chimed in. Oh, not just chimed in ages ago. I just didn't see it. She said the Dalesford market is still on. Lots of stuff still, but you'd probably have more luck purchasing at the mill in Dalesford.
Oh yeah, I've been to the mill. Yep.
But I assume that's one of those places where it's there'll be a vintage camera there that doesn't work, but it's $90 because it looks cool on your shelf. Is it more like that kind of place?
Yeah, the mill sells a lot of that sort of stuff, like decorative, retro antique, some sort of fake antique stuff. But I'm not necessarily. Although Greg will probably be on his way there as soon as we've finished here.
Get a new lens for that.
I tried the op shops first.
Yeah.
Smart.
Yep. Nice.
Very cool.
Do we have time to just cover off a couple of quick news items?
Yeah. Then we better. Jim and I probably got some work to do, I guess.
Yeah, I think you might have.
I'm going to drop 600 straps out to you soon, Jim.
Let's.
Yep.
We get that
let's
done
have a look
today.
at this.
Sure.
More Canon news.
More Canon news.
Well, this isn't new. This came out last month.
Oh, yeah.
So Canon already had. Where have I got it? Let me go back one. Canon already had a full frame, dual fisheye. No, that's the new one. Sorry. Oh, Greg, all over the shop. Anyway, Canon have just announced this new APS-C for the R7. Dual fisheye VR lens. So if you create VR content, then you've got a dual fisheye lens. That pretty crazy piece of tech.
Yep.
So it's a dual 3.9 millimeter f3.5 lenses, and it captures a 180 degree view. And I think, again, we talked earlier about real estate. I think real estate would be another application for this sort of lens, capturing, especially doing, walkthroughs, and, especially 100%. COVID taught us that more and more stuff needs to go online. Well, for that situation, it did, and a lot of stuff has stayed online. But, at the moment, rentals are getting copying a lot of flack, because often the photos that they're using to demonstrate the inside of a rental property are either 10 years old or, they don't really show off the property properly. Whereas this, you could achieve a full walkthrough and film it, or even just, get stills content. And I was trying to think of other applications. Obviously, there's applications in the gaming world for VR, but this sort of content, this sort of lens is fairly specific.
I looked pretty closely at the full frame version, and still am. I just haven't. It's pretty expensive, and I haven't, because I've got no professional application for it currently.
So it's this one here,
the L series one.
Yeah,
I can't remember. Oh, hang on.
Is it on the screen?
No, you're still on the. You can switch tabs by going to. There you go. Yeah, sorry, that's the one. Yep.
What was I on?
The
other fisheye.
The APS-C one.
Oh, the news article.
The new one. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the full frame one you were talking about.
Yeah, and I've looked at it closely, and I actually had a really good look at it again the other day, because I was watching. So what happened was I was in Sydney for the Canon launch, and I walked past the Apple store. There was a very big line, and a lot of people trying on that new Apple Vision Pro.
Yeah.
There was at least 10 people in there sitting down with Apple experts with the goggles on, testing them out, and then there was a line. And I know it's only recently become available to test and order. Like you could pre-order it, I think, but I think it's only recently become available kind of to purchase.
And pick up.
And to pick up and try it on, all that sort of stuff. So it's probably going through a bit of a lot of people just testing it out, maybe just for curiosity, but it is going to be a thing. I've had the Meta Quests. It's quite amazing what it can do. I actually am hopeful that, because at the moment I'm going through this thing of I don't know what photography's for anymore, my photography. If I'm getting paid for it, I know what it's for. It was kind of similar to what you were saying, Greg. Like I know what that's for, but if I get 100 megapixel GFX camera, or if I get the new R5 Mark II that takes amazing images, no one sees them in the detail that I've created them in. They see them on a tiny little phone screen, and I'm kind of hoping that potentially VR goggles are going to give us a way to. Can I have my own gallery that people can view with VR goggles, and I can actually have prints, digital displays that are so large in that virtual space that you can really see the detail. And obviously that's not for these lenses, because these lenses actually create the environment, the virtual environment that other people can see. And so the other application is you can have a landscape, a VR landscape you can share with people, and they can actually see it as a video, or oh my God, Grant's profile picture.
Wow. It's spreading.
It's beautiful.
Jim.
It's beautiful, Jim.
Yeah.
Start a gallery. Honestly, I've thought about it. If I was crazier than I am, I thought about whether Lucky could have like a factory type setting, but the entire, like a meter or a meter and a half of the outside and all the walls, you could walk around and photographers could just have their images there. You know, people could bring prints and have a section. Hey, this is your 10-meter section. You can put whatever artwork you want there. It can be for sale or whatever, but it just becomes kind of like a border of an actual factory. That's anyway, because I don't know what you do with images anymore. Long way around. I did see for the VR applications, I saw some people have done a YouTube channel called Colin and Samir. They do podcast interviews and stuff like that. They did essentially a walkthrough of their offices and YouTube studio and all that kind of stuff. And even they filmed it with this Canon lens, the Yale Series 1, on a tripod. So you can't move around. But even without the goggles, you can go to YouTube on this after the show, not now. Go to YouTube, go to Colin and Samir studio tour with VR, and you, with your phone, can look around their studio from the different tripod positions they've set up the camera while they were filming it. So even though you don't have the goggles yet, but I think people eventually probably will within the next 5 to 10 years. That's going that way, it seems. Even now, though, I was thinking, like, what can we produce where even on your phone, you know, so say if you were going out, if you were going out to do some landscape photography, you might be able to just sit a tripod with that VR lens on it and a microphone, and I can watch you work and talk to me, but I can look around the scene, you know, like it's not just you controlling the angle of where I'm viewing. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Greg works in the dark, so you wouldn't see anything.
We could just...
You can start that now, Greg. Just black screen.
Yeah, no one would know.
And every once in a while, just flash a torch on it.
Just right now, I'm on the plains of Africa. Just imagine.
Just leave the lens cap on,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just imagine and just have some sound effects playing of the ocean. Yeah. That's funny.
No, it is interesting.
But yeah, I'm interested in it. I do think there's going to be some sort of, there's going to be more potential, again, not really related to that lens specifically, but for photographers to share their work through VR. I think it's a way we can see big prints again rather than on our little tiny devices. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that's a subject for another day about what we do with our photos anymore. These days, you know, it's and you know, it kind of jumps back to Greg's point about, you know, for print, 3-4 megapixel was fine on newspaper, and what we see on our iPhone, do we need 40, 60, 100 megapixel if all we're doing is dropping it on social media? So I think we'll cover that in another episode about what we do with our photos. It's interesting because I'm big in gaming and love video games, and that our whole household is full of nerds and tech, and but we've never sort of, my son dabbled a little bit with VR in the early days, but you know, I've got friends who've bought the VR headset, the latest one that goes with the Sony PlayStation 5, and I think that thing costs well over $1,000, and he uses it a little bit. I mean, he's got some income to be able to spend on that stuff, but I know Sony ended production of that halfway through its anticipated life cycle because the sales just weren't there. Because it is such expensive tech, and the tech isn't going to get cheaper until more people adopt it.
Correct.
So I think, yes, there's application, and I think what you were talking about is wonderful in terms of seeing work at larger scales without actually having to print. You can actually even visualize, you know, I want to buy one of Greg Carrick's photos and put it on my wall. I wonder if it'll look good on this wall, or will it look good on this wall? And I can actually see it. And some sites that sell furniture and things like that already do that sort of thing, where you can take a photo and place the furniture in your own home and see how it looks. So I think that's an expanding business and an expanding opportunity for for that sort of work. And again, it's brave of Canon to, create one for an R5, a full frame L series lens, fisheye lens, but then to create one for APS-C as well.
Yeah, that's more really affordable. Yeah. There's definitely something there that I think, if I was with one of the other camera brands, I'd be thinking, are we going to get left behind a little bit here? Like Canon seemed to be, considering, they were a bit slow on mirrorless and stuff like that, they're jumping into this, like you say, to have two lenses and one that's actually more affordable. That quickly. It's interesting. They're obviously seeing something, working on something with Apple that we don't know yet, I think. And it will be interesting to see how the Vision Pro sells. I know in America there are lots of funny memes and YouTube videos of people driving their Cybertruck on autopilot whilst wearing their Apple Vision Pro. Oh my God.
Doing
surely that's not real.
Doing gestures. I don't know. Well, it could be. I mean, they have self-driving.
That's true.
Over there, as long as you're in the driver's seat.
And it does have pass-through. Like it's still, but you can walk around with them on. Like you can see the world. You wouldn't want to drive with it. I've seen those too. I don't know if they're just influencers trying to be trendy, but walking around, the streets doing their little hand gestures and swiping things. And I think it'd be good to see some sales numbers on that to work out where it's heading, or if it's an investment that Apple didn't read right. Let's jump to one more quick piece of news, and then we'll do a wrap. It sounds good.
This one here, let me just share this with everyone watching along at home. Can everyone see that? US sues, surprise, surprise, Adobe for hidden fees and confusing cancellation process.
Yeah.
Whoa, as in US government?
It's the Federal Trade Commission.
Oh no.
So let me just read the quick bit. It hasn't been a good couple of weeks of software giant Adobe. The Federal Trade Commission, this is in the US, is suing the company for violation of US consumer protection laws, what it deems hidden termination fees and an overly complicated process to cancel your Adobe services. The complaint centers around Adobe's Creative Cloud offering, which bundles various software products like Lightroom and Photoshop. Greg Carrick, do you use Lightroom or Adobe products?
No, I apart from being an early adopter, I'm an early exiter. As soon as they started to meet the idea of annual subscriptions, I dumped them. I don't like that idea at all. I prefer to buy something once and that's it. It's mine.
And then pay if there's a legitimate upgrade that you deem worthy, you'd pay for the upgrade as an independent cost. So what do you use now?
I use Affinity Photo instead of Photoshop. It does more than everything that I used Photoshop for anyway. Similar sort of interfacing. I bought that for $80 some years ago, and that's it.
Wow.
How does it handle the GFX files?
Perfectly fine.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
I remember the days of going into like a camera store or even JB. This is years ago, and there'd be a big box for Photoshop, and it was crazy price. It was like
$1,500.
Yeah, it was, and it was like the most expensive thing in the shop.
Yeah, but it was also really easy to download and pirate. No,
yeah, it was. Yeah, that's true.
It was.
I wouldn't know.
It was an interesting change that they made, because I definitely think a lot more people pay for it now than they used to, because like you say, it was prohibitively expensive. It was something that professionals and graphic designers and stuff could afford to buy. Then some people got it on a student discount, and then everyone else had to try and find a way to get it, And
I can understand as a business, it's like leasing a car, It's all tax deductible and all that sort of thing. But for a private person, forget it.
It sort of so it got more people to pay, but no one sort of calculated that long term. Hey, over 5 years, this is a fair bit of money,
it is a lot. It is. Yeah. I think this lawsuit or this federal legal action would be interesting to see. I mean, there's a lot of this stuff going on in the States at the moment. It's kind of a contradiction in process, really, but they created a system to allow monopolies like this to control the market and how consumers used it, and then now they're suing them for making the most of those freedoms. But it is interesting. I mean, I think everyone's had an experience, not just photographers, but in any kind of subscription service, trying to get out of it where you just can't find it on the website. How do I cancel this bloody subscription? Let alone stop them taking it out of your credit card or off your PayPal. So it'll be interesting to see. I think I don't think it'll change much, to be honest. I think they'll make some minor adjustments, and they'll still make you jump through a few hoops to get rid of it, and then they'll hound you to come back. They've got your email address. They're going to hound you to come back and stay with us. And here's 10%, here's 20%. It's a business model. I mean, Lucky Straps does it if you've put stuff in the cart and you've walked away from your cart. Every company does that because it's an effective tool to optimize sales, and that's fine. It's just the way of e-commerce. So we'll stay tuned on that. We'll see what happens, and we'll keep you updated. I think we'll wrap there because we're just approaching 11 a.m. here in good old
I need to have some breakfast.
Victoria. Yeah, me too. Just before we wrap, just a couple of little things, a little bit of housekeeping. If you're watching along, please leave some comments. If you watch after we've finished our live recording, still add comments. We'll try and get to them in the following weeks. We go live every Thursday, 9 a.m. and stay tuned for future guests. But most importantly, I want to thank Greg Carrick for giving us his time this morning and talking about his fascinating career and interesting projects and amazing ingenuity around, is it retrofitting? Is that the term? Retrofitting old lenses?
Yes.
Literally, it's retrofitting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Old lenses to modern tech. I think it's fascinating, and I think it's keep doing what you're doing. Break the rules. I think it's an important lesson for every photographer to solidarity.
Fight the man.
We'll get some t-shirts made up. To learn the rules, know the rules, but please break them. That's how creativity is born, and that's how we see amazing and fascinating applications like what Greg's doing with vintage lenses, with projector lenses. It's fascinating.
That
stuff,
and
really clever.
The ND filter, the night, the night photography.
Exposure square.
You've gotten me excited to go and try some personal projects. I just need to come up with clever ideas that.
Well, as I say, pick up your camera, take it for a walk, and have some fun.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
While we're doing little updates and wrapping up, I promise I'm working on it. It's up on my whiteboard still. We will get onto audio podcasts, so Spotify and other podcast feeds soon. I'm almost there. So once I'm up, we'll do all our back catalogue so far, and then after that, each week they'll be up within a day or two of us going live on YouTube, so you can listen with audio as well.
Yeah. And on that, sorry, the last 3 episodes of the podcast aren't appearing in the standard video list on YouTube when you jump into the channel. They're only in the live list. Yeah.
Righto, I'll fix that up.
Pointed that out. Sorry, I cut you off there.
No, that's all right. Because the other thing is, Yelena's got the Instagram page back up and running, the Camera Live on Instagram. Mm-hmm. So you can follow us there. We'll do updates whenever we're going live, because we're going to go live every week, but we might be getting some additional shows coming on board if we get guests at particular times, random shows and things pop up. Maybe there's a Fujifilm announcement we have to live watch and talk about.
And we're working on it. We're working on maybe a Jim, Greg, and Justin in the one place, all sitting on bar stools.
I was thinking about that yesterday. I'm gonna have to buy some stuff, but yes, we need to do that as well. So,
you seem so shook up about that.
It's tough. There's lots happening. But keep in touch with us on Instagram for updates when things are going to be happening.
Yeah.
So thanks once again to Greg and for his time and for his sage advice and wisdom. Thanks to Jim for joining us from the workshop. And Justin, good to see you back home. Greg Stubbings has said, thanks, blokes.
Oops.
Oh, you.
We did it at the same time.
Thanks,
He's
blokes.
back.
That's a lovely profile picture, Greg.
Thanks, Greg. Greg number 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The third
nice,
Greg.
Nice to have you come. Any other Gregs out there that would like to chime in?
Please join in. Please join in. And just before we sign off, I just want to share a slightly photography-related joke. So the joke is Justin and Jim and Greg, where do sad rainbows go?
Prism.
They do go to Prism, but it's only a light sentence and they have time to reflect on their actions.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's a terrible joke. I've delivered that joke over the last 24 hours about 17 times, and my family hate me for it.
I love that. I love that. It's terrible.
It is terrible. But look, it's right on 11 a.m. We're going to call it quits there. Justin, any parting words or things to look forward to from Lucky Straps? Just quickly.
No, not at all. Although, I didn't even put it up. I've got this thing. If you do want one of our camera straps, which you don't need to buy it, but, if you want one, go and check them out. You can actually scan the QR code near Greg's head. And
that Greg.
Over there.
Yeah.
If you scan that code, you'll get 15% off on a newly set up code. The code's Justin, but if you scan the code, it'll be automatic. You'll get 15% off any of our camera straps or belts. We're going to be introducing codes for Greg, Jim, and me. So that way you can vote with your purchases as to which person on the podcast you like the best. They'll all get the same discount. Yeah. I might make mine 1% more just to try and get ahead.
Some will get packaged nicer.
Yeah. So at the moment, Greg Carrick is. So does Greg Carrick get all the royalties for these? They're in his little box.
Oh, yeah, well, they are in his box. We'll for the thousands of orders that we get, we'll be sure to appropriately compensate. I
feel like we have some news. I don't know if we've mentioned it, but
What's
Justin,
that?
down the bottom of the screen over you,
yes,
there's a new Lucky logo.
That's true. It's snuck
I don't
in.
feel like, has it been mentioned?
It hasn't been mentioned. We'll probably need to do a whole nother show on
nice
on
one,
stuff
Jim.
like that.
It's meant to be a secret.
No. It's not a surprise. I put it on the website over a month ago, but we might have some new merchandise coming. We've got some new things happening with the new logo. Yeah. It was kind of, anyway, we'll talk about this another day because it's a soft launch. We actually celebrated by not celebrating our 10-year anniversary in April. So this year is kind of a new, the new birth of a new Lucky, and this logo is kind of the start of it. But yeah, we'll discuss. We'll go over the 10-year history of Lucky Straps in another episode and where we're heading from here.
Yolanda's just said the discount codes will be the true calculation of which camera is better, Fuji, Nikon, or Canon.
That's true. That is true. We might have to put logos over what team we, get T-shirts. Yeah. I heart
Greg, if we get Greg Carrick back on, his whole screen will be filled with brands.
Vintage lens brands.
Vintage lens brands. All right, we're going to call it quits there, guys. This is the Camera Life podcast. We're signing off on episode, what did I say it was? 23.
23,
Thanks for joining us live. If you have, thanks for those that have commented. Make sure you watch our back catalogue, like and subscribe, all of that hoo-ha. But above all else...
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks Greg.
Thanks for coming on, Greg.
Been an absolute pleasure and a delight. I've learned a few things from it, which is wonderful. And stay tuned for next week's episode. But above all else, get out with your camera and just have some fun, as Greg says. The other GC, not me. And have a safe weekend and a great week ahead.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
Bye, everybody.